Greetings, friends, and welcome to the What's Right Show. Sam Mirejovsky here, News Talk 840 KXNT. Of course, nothing much happened this weekend, right? Well, far from it. Of course, Saturday, things began popping as news of American bombers, B-2 bombers deployed over Iran, hit the 3 nuclear sites. And ever since then, everybody has had their panties in a twist. And I want to step back from it here, if I may, just a moment, give some historical context, which I think is instructive for those of you freaking out that World War III is upon us. By the way, my email, sam@whatsrightshow.com, sam@whatsrightshow.com. And on Twitter, on X, you can find me at What's Right Sam. Okay. Did you notice today's pronouncement from Vladimir Putin? Putin was asked flat out what he's going to do for Iran, what engagement Iran can expect from the Russian Federation, and Putin basically shut it down. Putin said in so many words, look, I can't, I could obviously condemn in the strongest terms possible the American attack on the Iranian facilities, but at the same time, we're just monitoring the situation. We hope that peace will prevail. So basically, no action. A lot of people today woke up this morning thinking that China was somehow going to enter the fray. Instead, if you read the tea leaves, it seems that the Chinese rebuked Iran for their threats to close the Hormuz Strait. Most of Iranian oil that is exported goes to China. It accounts for somewhere around 15 to 20% of China's total oil needs. China is an oil-hungry country. They do not produce it domestically and rely on Iran and other states to receive their oil. And so, you notice that was all the talk yesterday. And today, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night in Israel. And so middle of the night, Middle East, and nothing. Signal jammers, yes, throughout the Gulf there. Some indications that there might be hostile activities, but, and this is always the test, I know that you heard on the news, obviously the markets are up today. This is a reflection of the smart people who are moving money around, realizing that World War III is not coming. But the other big indicator is that oil is down almost 7%. Worldwide oil prices have cratered. Everybody was expecting a sudden pinch, not happening. Now, what does this remind me of? Actually, it's funny, Robbie. I've meant to get into this now for a few days or even maybe a couple weeks, suggesting a parallel between what is happening in Iran today and the events leading up to the collapse of the Iron Curtain. I can tell you this because I lived through it, albeit as a boy here in the U.S., viewing it from afar, but it was a personal story, one that my parents, all of us were following very closely because, of course, we were all living in California, and my parents had escaped communist Czechoslovakia, had come via Western Europe to the U.S., and we're very much invested in hoping in the ultimate collapse of communism that had taken over their country. And my parents, ever since they left, were not able to go back, much like the Iranian diaspora around the world that are living in exile and have, family members, friends, and cultural ties to a country they personally are afraid to visit. Now, I can tell you this. And we forget this timeline, even those of you who were much older than me at the time this was all going down, how quickly and suddenly the Russian supported, the Soviet supported dictatorships in Eastern Europe crumbled. Because I can tell you that in 1988, going into 1988, and even at the beginning of 1989, few would have predicted the complete and total collapse of the Eastern Bloc. And that's a fact. If you go back and look at the timeline, and the reason I'm bringing this up, because there is a lot of talk back and forth about regime change. And I'm really sick of this being a dirty word on the right. I understand that we are allergic to it after Victoria Nuland and all the Obama people have run around the world doing regime change in all the worst possible ways. But the idea of a new government, a Western-friendly government, a secular Iranian government in Iran is a great idea for us. It would be a good thing for the U.S. to have. Now, that's a fact. And the question now is, who does what? And do we, as the United States, do anything at all? Do we even need to do anything at all? And that's why I'm bringing this up, because go back to 1989. So, there were a series of events that led, obviously, to the fall of 1989. In November, of course, the Berlin Wall came down. November 17th, the Czechoslovakian socialist government gave up the ghost. But in this period of time, there's something that preceded it. Yes, there were protests. Yes, there was mass emigration from East Germany. Yes, there was years, by the way, of financial, of economic, decay that set through Eastern Bloc countries. People were poor. People were hungry. People were and became very aware that they were not living well, and that the promises of the socialist dream, of the socialist utopia, fed to them from their very first time they were in school all the way through adulthood, was all a joke. It was a farce. And people got fed up. And something happened in October. And you remember this, right? Gorbachev came and visited East Germany, and Gorbachev was asked by Honecker for support as things were starting to get a little out of hand. Erich Honecker was the dictator of East Germany and an Iron Man. He was, invincible. I mean, his Stasi, secret police, were vaunted. And Gorbachev, at a critical juncture in time, when the regimes in the Eastern Bloc were already on the ropes, Gorbachev said no. He said no when he was asked for help. So today I wake up and I see that Putin is saying no to Iran. China is displeased with Iran. The entire axis supporting Iran is crumbling. And this is what the World War III people don't understand, right? I mean, look at the countries that would help Iran. The Iranian foreign minister flew to Russia on basically begging for help, and Putin publicly rebuked him. China, well, CNBC today reports that China's support for Tehran grows more restrained with the U.S. entering the fray, not the other way around. And Iran's threat to close the Strait of Hormuz is going to hurt China more than the U.S. What about Syria? Well, Syria, I don't know if you knew this, they have a new government. That new government really ain't interested very much in helping Iran. What about Hezbollah? The report yesterday that the supreme leader of Iran, Khamenei, instructed Naim Qassem, who is the Secretary General of Hezbollah. This is like the guy, is this what Robbie the Fourth guy? Israel keeps killing whoever is the head of Hezbollah. It's tough to keep track. Anyway, the leader of Hezbollah was instructed, apparently, according to some reports, to attack Israel. Well, Hezbollah refused. They said no. They are afraid of Israel, of the IDF. Remember, Hezbollah signed a ceasefire with Israel in November, and they don't want to break it. What about the Iraqi militias? Well, they're too bogged down in Iraq. They haven't made any noises they're going to support Iran. Hamas? No. Houthi? Maybe the Houthis. So who do they have? Burkina Faso and the Houthis? Is that the grand alliance that is going to keep Iran afloat? Now, my argument is it won't. And what I am sensing here are sort of the dominoes falling around the end of the Iranian Republic, the Islamic Republic of Iran. And this is a good thing. Now, let's talk about this, what it means for the U.S., what it will require. Because my point on this is it may not require much of anything beyond this point. And everybody is freaking out. In fact, being really offensive in their displeasure with Trump for thanking Israel and Netanyahu in his remarks following the bombing campaign. But, it's true. I mean, Israel has done the world's dirty work here, and they've done it remarkably well. Now, the other thing we need to get to is what does this mean for the Iranian nuclear program in the short term, and to what extent the ability there for the weapon to be developed has been degraded, subject of some question marks as well there. So we'll get to all of it today, I promise. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Leor Sapir, who is a Manhattan Institute fellow, writes this morning on X, I'm surprised it was bunker busters bombs that took out Iran's nuke program and not Clause 52A, Section 3, Subsection 13F, on page 14,762 of Appendix 71D of the Obama nuclear deal. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT, little tongue-in-cheek there. Need to give Dr. Sapir credit for that because that's exactly what we're dealing with here. I'm absolutely astounded that there are serious people, even people that I respect on our side, that think that there is a question about what to do with Iran. Now, every logical person over the past 25 years has said that Iran can't have or be allowed to have a nuclear bomb. I've given my reasons for it. I view the Iranians as strict adherents of a religion that embodies within it fatalism in a way that make them fundamentally dangerous. Dismissing the dangers of the Iranian regime would be foolish. And don't take it from me. Take it from maybe perhaps one of the greatest conservative thinkers, intellectuals, Thomas Sowell, who gave these remarks on Iran, on the subject of Iran, in 2010 in an interview at the Hoover Institution. Now, Thomas Sowell's not Lindsey Graham. We can agree on this. He's one of the most reasonable, pragmatic, and brilliant conservatives alive. And what he said here in this interview back, 15 years ago, remains true today. The fundamentals of the equation have not changed.
So what do you think we should do about Iran?
Stop them from getting nuclear weapons.
And that would mean attacking them or acquiescing in an Israeli attack?
Yeah, I'm. You know, it's sad that it's a question of acquiescing in an Israeli attack. There have been indications that Saudi Arabia would be quite willing to have Israeli planes fly over there at night and bomb Iran. And then, of course, larger protests with the United Nations in the morning.
You know, a lot of people recognize the threat of Iran, but you're actually one of the few people that I've talked to who really see it as a kind of, you know, the term these days is existential threat to the United States. It really changes our existence.
Oh, absolutely. Going all the way back to the Ayatollah Khomeini, he said that his first loyalty is not to Iran, it's to Allah. And so if you know, we can't deter them with the threat that we'll come in and destroy a whole lot of innocent Iranians. They don't care. I mean, you can't deter suicide bombers.
So deterrence worked. We're here at the Hoover Institution, which is home to a lot of people who were architects of the deterrence policy. Deterrence worked during the Cold War, but you don't think it will work today?
No, because you can't deter suicidal people. You either stop them or you don't stop them.
That's it. That's it. Now, I can't believe, and I have to say this, you know, Bush, that the amount of damage that George W. Bush did to the American psyche, that's what how I'm gonna explain it, to the American psyche with Afghanistan and Iraq, two of the biggest boondoggles of the modern era, scarring multiple generations of Americans, first physically and literally on the battlefield, and then politically, socially, psychologically. Those of us who felt misled, right, about, you know, in supporting the war originally, and remember, a wide majority of Americans did, flat out lied to, and we were told, you got to go in there, we've got to get it done, you know, put soldiers in the, you know, boots on the ground, you know, and take the country over. And the result, of course, you know, speaks for itself, all the way through the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal under President Biden. So now we're here, right? And we're dealing with this issue. I mean, by the way, Medvedev, who is a top guy inside Russia, was a one-time president. He basically was Putin's placeholder as president, so Putin could then later run again for another term. Medvedev is one of the closest allies of Vladimir Putin. And Medvedev wrote a tweet. He goes, well, yeah, you guys didn't get the nukes. So he's like, okay, we didn't get the nukes. By the way, I want to talk about that. I'm going to get into that after the break. Did we get the weapons? Did the mission achieve what it intended to achieve, right? That's a separate conversation. Medvedev seems to claim that we didn't. But in claiming that we didn't, he confirms that the program existed and that they were looking to create nuclear weapons, that they were going nuclear. This is wild. And this thing has been overlooked by every single NIMBY-PIMBY critic that has come along here to say, oh, we don't need to do this. Oh, yeah, 2 weeks away from the bomb. 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, too close for comfort. Now, if we're going to get into the subject of regime change, let me tell you today, press conference in Paris, the heir to the Iranian throne, Prince Reza Pahlavi, speaking, said this, a very prescient comment, I think.
This is our Berlin Wall moment. But like all moments of great change, it comes fraught with danger. We stand at a crossroads. One road leads to bloodshed and chaos, the other to a peaceful and democratic transition.
Peaceful and democratic transition. The appeal of the heir to the throne of Iran for peace, reaching out to top leadership, having them reach out to him, Doesn't sound like the beginnings of World War III to me. Of course, things can go sideways. But I think there's, on balance, more hope that this thing now begins to resolve peacefully than not. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Rarely wrong, always right. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the program. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email, at What's Right Sam on X, where many of you already follow me. Love seeing your comments on my posts. Thank you. So just after the B-2 bombers got back into American airspace, returning from a almost 40-hour mission there and back to Iran, dropping bombs on 3 nuclear sites, President Trump held a press conference. And this was our time late Saturday. This is what Trump said.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime, Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
Okay. So that was the comment. Now, what did he say in here? He said, look, strikes were a spectacular military success. The nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Okay. I can't tell you one way or another if that's true. I can't. I don't know. I'll say this. Pretty much every person who is reporting one way or the other way seems to be ideologically motivated. I'll give you a case in point. I saw some guy say, well, okay, I finally looked at that. He looked like he had some credentials, right? So he goes, oh, I've looked at finally looked at the imagery. I could tell you categorically the facilities are A-okay. And it's an American guy, right? So I'm reading the post, and he starts complaining about the Zionists, about the Jews, and all this stuff. And you go, I see what I'm dealing with here. I don't think Trump could know definitively on Saturday, and I still think maybe Trump doesn't know for sure whether or not the attacks caused the extent of damage hoped by the planners. If, assuming that the hope was that these attacks completely obliterate these facilities, which I think I have to assume that was the intent. So we have to wait and see is my point. Now, here's what I don't believe. I cannot imagine a world where even before a week and a half ago, because remember the Israelis launched their attack on Iran a week ago Thursday. I can't imagine that with Israel having pretty much full air superiority over Iranian airspace and, let's say operatives on the ground, to the extent that they had drones waiting idly, prepared, hidden for deployment in the midst of that first surprise attack Thursday to Friday. I cannot imagine that the intel on the ground about what was going on wasn't good. So I read a report somewhere. Oh, you see this line of trucks. These are all the trucks leaving the facility with the nuclear goods. These are the 60% enriched uranium. There go the trucks. They're just leaving. They're leaving Fordo. They're leaving Natanz. Look, they're making their clean getaway. And I'm looking at that. I'm going, wait. So, okay, so Israel literally has command and control, basically, of Iranian airspace, and they missed a convoy of trucks laden with nuclear material just sort of sauntering out of one of the 8 or let's say 10 sites that are primary points of interest for the IDF and for the Mossad and for the CIA. Yeah, I don't think so. That's the kind of stuff that doesn't pass muster. All right. So I think it's fog of war. I don't know what the end result here is, but let me say something else. It's very difficult to develop or to continue developing nuclear weapons or much of anything if A, the enemy keeps shooting your scientists, bombing your scientists, maiming your scientists, and scaring your top leadership either into defecting or going underground. At the same time, aerial bombardment, whether fully successful or not, puts a bit of a damper on operations. Agreed? Like, I haven't gotten any pushback from anybody with any common sense on that point. We don't need boots on the ground to stop Iran's nuclear program. They get out of line, done. Get out of line again, done. And look at what they did. They fired missiles at a base in Qatar or Qatar, depending on your preferred pronunciation. Qatar, by the way, flipped out. Robbie, I don't know if you saw this, and the Saudis too. My God, the Saudis are pissed. Qatar's pissed. Everybody is pissed at Iran. People who, in the past maybe would have banded together against the Jews of Israel now are more on Israel's side than they are on Iran's side. More evidence, of course, to the isolation of the Ayatollah and the Islamic Republic. But nonetheless, these missiles apparently were all intercepted in air. As of, I guess that's what we know as of right now, no casualties reported on the ground. The New York Times reporting that this was all choreographed. Trump himself confirming on Truth Social that the Iranians somehow gave him a heads up on this, that this was going to be their response, and that after this, everything was going to quiet down. This, by the way, happened in 2010 after the death of Soleimani, the murder of Soleimani. So, what do we make of this? Not 2010. What year was that, Robbie? What year was Soleimani taken out? Anyway, but they've done this kind of thing before, is my point. So here we are. At this point in time, can't say if the strikes took out the nuclear program. Can say that we demonstrated that we can do this, that we can fly from, where is it, Kansas? Our warplanes fly from, the B-2s fly from Kansas to Iran and back, and drop basically 450,000 pounds of ordnance. I mean, it's astounding. It's a flex. And, all the while, with minimum to no casualties on civilian casualties. I mean, that's what's remarkable about this. How do we make sure that the nuclear program does not continue? Well, I have an idea. Let's let the Iranians overthrow their government. And are they close to doing that? Is that conceivably possible? Is it Americans manipulating things behind it? No. I think, based on everything that I have seen, that, we shared this with you last week. There was a polling that was done, outside group calling into Iran, and if anything, right, the numbers would be skewed a little bit more in favor of the Islamic Republic, given how afraid people are to share their opinions. I mean, it was astounding how many people preferred. It was a strong majority, 80% or maybe more. Robbie, pull up those stats for me again. It was 80% favored a secular government. Meanwhile, the Mossad, this is brilliant. Have you seen this? The Mossad, oh my gosh, they are calling top Iranian generals, and commanders, and talking to them like this. Now, of course, this is all in Farsi, but I'll explain in a moment what this is.
زنگ زنم که 2 ساعت پیش باقری سلامی شمخانی رو دونه دونه فرستاد جهنم. الان تنها پیشنهادی هم که به تو میکنم، هم میتونم بهت پیشنهاد کنم 12 ساعت وقت داری که پاتو بگیری با زن و بچت فرار کنی.
So what is this? These are Mossad agents calling individual members of the IRGC command who are still alive and saying, hey, we took out your friend over there. We took out your friend over there. We know where you are. You have 12 hours to leave the country with your wife and child, or it's curtains. They're going, this is massive psychological warfare. How long can a regime like this last with the remaining, top people all, fleeing for the hills? The Ayatollah's somewhere deep underground and hiding. Trump keeps trolling him, saying, oh, we know where you are, but we're not going to do anything. And, and then you saw this report that Israel just took out the entire IRGC headquarters in the middle of the day. Imagine this. Imagine the U.S. were to lose air superiority to the extent that a foreign adversary was flying over Washington, D.C. and just completely nuked the Pentagon. People on the scene reporting that hundreds, if not thousands, of bodies are being pulled from the wreckage there. All IRGC people. It's a disaster. This is a regime in its, I don't know how else to read this, folks. It's a regime in its last days. Trump can go on Truth Social like he did this morning and say, well, the regime change, it's a word, it's I guess it's kind of not a nice word, but I kind of like it. And every person from Tucker Carlson on down freaks out. Oh my gosh, this is exactly what we were warning you about. Then Trump turns around and says, no, I want peace. I don't want regime change. Stop paying attention to what Trump is saying. I told you this last week. There were people, you were emailing me all the time going, I can't. Trump has to do this. He can't back down now. He's not backing down. Just don't listen to what he's saying. It's all meant to confuse the enemy. It's specifically designed to create confusion. They're analyzing every tweet and every word, and Trump's just messing with them. But what do I think is happening? I don't think that Israel this morning bombed a key prison outside of Tehran that houses basically all the political prisoners of the country. So these are all the opponents of the regime. They bombed it. Now, didn't bomb it. They blew a hole in the front gate. They sent the guards scurrying. Most of the prisoners, I would assume based on the targeted action, are fine. Reports say they were seen streaming out and leaving the facility. Thing after thing like this going on is going to set a condition that will make it impossible for the Islamic Republic to continue. And then, in the aftermath, let the Iranians conduct their government. We're not particular about what it is. We just don't want to deal with the crazy fanatics that want to take over the world and, and have a ton of nuclear bombs. If we have a secular government that is allied with Saudi Arabia, with Qatar, with the United States, right? We're not looking to, again, we're not looking to boots on the ground a la Afghanistan, a la Iraq. Something completely different, folks. All right. Goodness. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Back in a moment. From CNN a few minutes ago, Israeli officials apparently are signaling that military operations in Iran could soon wind down. Israel believes it can achieve its remaining military objectives in the coming days in Iran, which would tee things up for a ceasefire This again per Israeli officials speaking on background to CNN. So that's that. By the way, as predicted, not World War III, but rather bringing the Iranians to heel and creating a mess for the regime domestically that they hopefully don't recover from. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. So to that end, I saw this thing here. By the way, Iranian official to Reuters, quote, "We are rational enough to start a diplomatic process after punishing the aggressor." Comment after sending missiles to Qatar at a U.S. airbase. All those missiles apparently intercepted. Remember I mentioned, by the way, Soleimani was taken out by the U.S. in 2020. So forgive me, I had that date wrong by quite some time. And December 2022, so 2 years after Soleimani's death, is when the survey of Iranian attitudes was done. And this is what I was referencing earlier. 200,000 respondents, 158,000 of those inside Iran, 42 of them outside the country. Islamic Republic, yes or no? Inside Iran, 81% said no. Only 15% said yes. And as you might imagine, outside of the country, 99%, a resounding near totality, said hell no. Things have not gotten better in the last 3 or 2.5 years, if you will, since then in the country. People are not doing well financially. The government continues to crack down, and there's a growing sense of despair. So it is a Berlin moment as the Prince of Iran, the Shah in exile, Reza Pahlavi II, said today from his press conference in Paris. And by the way, one of the things that the Shah said, he would offer himself up to lead a transition government. He's not looking to get political power. But I'll tell you, he is somebody that we can do business with, and he's good for American interests. I have a question for the Tucker Carlsons of the world. This just came into my mind, so might as well bring it up now. If we don't have influence in the Middle East, if we do what Vivek Ramaswamy said a couple years ago now when he came to Vegas and attended the RJC conference and said to a room full of Republican Jews, Israel can go at it alone. And I'm sitting, you felt the oxygen just evaporate from the everybody was dying. Mark Levin was right in front of me. I thought Mark Levin was going to collapse on me. Thought they were going to have to bring out the paddles. Okay. So, if we were to do that, which the Tuckers, and I don't know where Vivek is on it now, but Vivek today, Candace Owens certainly, but a lot of MAGA, right? Oh, we're not doing anything in the world. We're not doing anything in the world. We're just going to withdraw from the world. You know, America first can mean that we do throw our weight around the world. You know, we don't have to waste hundreds of billions of dollars via USAID. We don't have to support condoms for Nigerian sheep herders, okay? We don't have to do a lot of the stupid things that Democrats and Republicans have done in the past several decades to quote unquote spread American soft power. We can help our allies militarily, which also helps boost our GDP as our weapons manufacturers, get orders for American-made goods. Good for the economy, good for spreading our power. We can support our allies. We can deliver some, bomb payloads when necessary. But if we do what the other side is proposing and completely withdraw within our borders, and I thought about this a little bit. So who takes that space? It doesn't end up unoccupied, right? If we pull back, that space doesn't just end up, nobody there. The Chinese take it over, probably, right? They're the ones who are spreading around the world. And at what point do we feel that China's creep across the globe is uncomfortable? Do we really just get uncomfortable when they hit Mexico and Canada? Is that when we begin to worry? Because they're already coming up through the Caribbean. I can tell you that right now. And I'm not just Cuba. So, it's never all one way or the other. And when it comes to foreign policy, it's not binary. Anybody who views it through sort of this black and white binary lens, I think, is missing some important color, if you will. All right, Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Another hour of the What's Right show up next. Don't go anywhere. Lots to cover, I promise. All right, I'm here. Don't worry. Everybody in a panic. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. And of course, on X, on Twitter, you can find me at What's Right Sam. All right, this weekend, have to mention this. FedEx founder, billionaire Fred Smith passed away at 80. This guy was an absolute legend. And I wasn't going to share the story, but I will. Many, many years ago, I was, first time really starting a business. The year was 2004, just to give you an idea sort of technology-wise. We didn't have voice over IP for phone systems. We just had, that box that would go on the wall somewhere in, the back of your office in the server room. And that was your phone switch, right? Physical phones. Anyway, different time. My point is we went to set up the extensions. And it was just two of us at one point in the office. But we wanted to seem bigger. And I remembered from, many years ago, a story about Fred Smith that when he bought his first two airplanes for FedEx in FedEx's sort of very, very early years, he gave them very long numbers, identifying numbers within the company system. So, if you saw it on a manifest as a consumer, a customer, corporate customer, for example, you would think that FedEx had a lot more planes than they actually did, right? He didn't call it number one and number two. He gave it like this big, long four, I forget what it was, 3 or 4 digit code. And so, consequently, I took that and I even though there's two of us in the office, I gave us 4 digit extensions. So we would seem like we had some scale at a critical time. So anyway, the other story that is one of legend is that in 1973, Fred saved the company from bankruptcy. He took the last, this is crazy, the last $5,000 that the company had, and he came right here to Las Vegas and gambled it in a blackjack game. He won $27,000. And the unexpected win allowed FedEx to cover a big and very critical fuel bill and continue operations for another week, which gave Smith time to secure additional funding, restructure the company's operations, and the rest is history. So here on the What's Right show, we salute Fred Smith, a great American, a great entrepreneur, someone who created something from scratch, which is what America's all about, and some great stories about this guy. He was an absolute, like I said, an absolute legend. So well, I've got to get to. But you see the news on immigration just now. The Supreme Court has ruled that the Trump administration can, in fact, deport illegal aliens to third-party countries. So you can send them, for example, to El Salvador. This is a huge win for the Trump administration. Now, did you see this over the weekend? Mahmoud Khalil was released. Mahmoud Khalil is one of the organizers there of the protests at Colombia. This guy's a Syrian national. He was bundled up by the Trump people and had been awaiting deportation, and the judge ordered him to be released in New York City. So anyway, he was escorted by AOC, and these were his comments at the airport upon his return from federal custody. And it sure sounds like he's going to continue the fight.
Still, the fight is far from over. The genocide is still happening in Gaza. Israel is still waging a full war against Palestinians across Palestine. The U.S. government is funding this genocide, and Columbia University is investing in this genocide. This is what I was protesting. This is what I will continue to protest with every one of you. Not only if they threaten me with detention, even if they would kill me, I would still speak up for Palestine.
What a brave man. They don't get to kill me. He couldn't even be in a federal lockup. I'm not going to use the P word, but it goes nicely with hat. All right. You see that one of the groups that he was allied with on the Columbia campus, Unity of Fields, posted on their X account today a photograph of American soldiers' coffins in the back of a large transport plane. Dead soldiers being repatriated home to the United States. And they quote, the caption here reads, "Soon, inshallah," which is God willing in Arabic. You tell me, listen, I can explain to you constitutionally why Marco Rubio can absolutely yank this guy and send him back to Syria. I don't care. I know his wife, is a citizen, whatever. He is not a citizen. He is basically an advocate for enemy combatants within the U.S. The Secretary of State can absolutely send this guy packing. So let's just assume for a minute I'm right and, MSNBC is wrong. But how does it make sense for us to keep people like this in the country? I understand that the left politically is so invested in maintaining, illegal aliens. This guy happens to not be illegal. There's a difference, yes. Still is subject to removal as a non-citizen. But how are we the only country in the world that tolerates visitors, guests coming here and acting like this? Who comes here and protests America by celebrating dead American soldiers? That's the absolute state of things. That's why, I think we're at a precipice right now. And to this extent, I understand the many people out there, including people that I deeply respect, who have been very suspicious of this attack on Iran, fearing a wider conflict, and of course, complicated, resources draining exercise, knowing full well that the real fight that we have on our hands right now is domestically. One, in terms of budget, but I think even bigger than the budget is the question of ridding this country of illegals. I have to I have to say something that as I see what's going on in LA and in California in particular, but also in New York, I'm seeing more and more data to support the estimate of more than 50 million illegal immigrants in the country. Now, it makes sense, right? And Biden probably brought in 14 to 20 million, maybe 25. Imagine this. What if Biden in 4 years doubled? It's wild. Doubled the number of illegal immigrants in the country. You can never say that Biden didn't get anything done. I mean, that's a spectacular exercise. But what with that, right? What do you do with this? You know, even leftists in Europe are starting to wake up and realize that they cannot have these invaders in their society, in their world, that it's simply not sustainable. I saw somewhere a Danish newspaper, I'm pulling it up here in just a moment. Yeah, this was a centrist mainstream Danish newspaper, read sort of a kind of a New York Times, if you will, of Denmark, actually published an editorial, quote, "That is why re-immigration is necessary. A complete stop to immigration from the Middle East and a full speed ahead in sending people from the Middle East without Danish citizenship out of Denmark. It is also an admission that fast-tracking these people for citizenship, giving them EU passports, was one of the most stupid and idiotic things ever." I guess Denmark, which is a tiny minority country, right? You know, just there on the tip of continental Europe, has gone, okay, well, you know, we've been completely overrun and these people are changing the country. But what about us here in the U.S.? Think of this is where Thomas Massie, and I'm going to get into the Massie versus Trump fight here after the break, but this is where Thomas Massie loses me. He says, no, we cannot spend $1 on the border, on border protection and everything because we are in a deficit. My answer to Massie and everybody else, Rand Paul, that says this, is the budget will only get worse if we are paying, if there are 50 million people in this country to whom we're providing services that shouldn't even be here. Cut 50%, what is that, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh of the country? Unbelievable. Okay, I'm going long. I got to take a break. Folks, they're giving me dirty looks here. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Back in a moment.
The Salmon Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Sam Mirejovsky here, News Talk 840 KXNT. I just have to play this real fast here. This is unbelievable. Robbie, it's the audio only, but this is the future, I hope, Shah of Iran conducting a whole interview in French. How many languages does he speak? It's beautiful French. Anyway, I mean, it means I don't want to get too caught up in it, but I'm saying a sophisticated guy. Imagine a future in Iran with that guy leading things. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Greetings, friends. Welcome back. One thing I wanted to mention about this whole attack over the weekend, Trump B-2s flying in the dead of the night, dropping bombs that apparently, according to some, did nothing to thwart Iranian nuclear ambition. At the same time, those same people claiming that there was no nuke. All right, just contradictory things being said. One of the big criticisms is that Trump acted illegally, right, outside of the bounds of the Constitution. And one of the things, I have to, first of all, Thomas Massie, Trump went nuclear on him yesterday, speaking of the N-word, as Trump called it in a recent tweet, Medvedev, the nuclear word. Trump went nuclear on Thomas Massie, nice congressman, libertarian, over in part Massie's just staunch, criticism of Trump for acting without congressional approval. So the War Powers Act gives the president, I think it's 60 days, to basically do whatever needs to be done, and after 60 days needs congressional approval. That's the basic, thumbnail sketch of it. And one of the interesting things is that Massie on one point over the weekend said the president absolutely can't do this. And then he put out a second tweet today saying that, I'll read the tweet. Our War Powers resolution has 57 co-sponsors, meaning, by the way, he has sided with Ilhan Omar and AOC and Rashida Tlaib. Whether you like it or not, Congress will be voting on U.S. hostilities in Iran. Under the War Powers Act, the president is required to withdraw from hostilities in Iran within 60 days, plus a 30-day extension, unless he gets a vote of Congress. So here, Massie, first he goes, what the president's doing is unconstitutional, and then admits, we're doing a resolution. By the way, the president has basically 90 days to do what he needs to do, and after that, he needs congressional approval. See, this is where Massie loses me, Robbie. This is stunting at its best. How is this different from what the Democrats are doing? Now, does Trump need to waste his time on primarying the guy? I don't know. But that's the threat. Trump is threatening to primary Massie. Now, we'll follow that as it develops. Of course, all the predictable libs are all saying the same thing about Trump breaking international law. But it's so absurd that even liberal journalists have to push back on it. Here's an exchange between Sonny Hostin and ABC Jonathan Karl, who tries basically to save her from herself.
Well, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have called into question the constitutionality of Donald Trump's actions. He bypassed Congress, potentially violated the War Powers Resolution. I believe this is certainly a clear violation of international law at the very least. Democratic House Leader Hakeem Jeffries accused the president of misleading the country as to his intentions. What do you think are the possible ramifications that President Trump could face for arguably overstepping his authority?
Well, look, constitutionally, only Congress has the power to declare war. The War Powers Act would make it seem very clear you need to have congressional approval on this. But president after president after president has launched military action without the approval of Congress.
Yeah.
And Congress, under Democratic and Republican leadership, has complained the president is violating the War Powers Act. This is not new.
So this has all been an issue before, and obviously there's countless examples of this, right? Here's a moment yesterday on CNN, and you can see Ms. Hinojosa. Well, I'll play it. Hinojosa, Xochitl Hinojosa talking to Scott Jennings and Cassie Hunt.
I think that there are a lot of questions that are being raised by Congress right now. And the reason that they're being raised is because normally you would need congressional approval for something like this. And I know that my friend here is laughing a little bit, but I will say,
covered Congress for a long time, but they gave a lot of that away.
But I will say, in order for the president to take action without congressional approval, he needed to show that there was a real true threat to the United States and that the strike would not cause escalation. The problem with this is that normally you would have a group of lawyers from all across the agencies that actually would make these determinations. Trump did away with that at the beginning of this administration. So it's unclear what type of legal advice Trump was getting. The Department of Defense usually puts out a statement and says what the legality is of any strike that the president is taking without congressional action. Here, we have not heard from DOD what is happening there. So what will be critical in the weeks to come is Congress must see the underlying intelligence about how they were in direct threat and how the U.S. needed to respond without congressional approval. But as of right now, I have not seen that.
You're arguing that after 46 years, of the Iranian regime killing Americans, threatening Americans, saying over and over and over again, death to America, that maybe they were just, didn't mean it, that they're fiery but mostly peaceful Iranian butchers? I mean, I don't understand.
Scott Jennings to the rescue. Yeah, so again, her point is, well, if you don't have congressional approval, you need to show definitive proof that there is a clear and present danger to the United States of America. And Jennings like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like we've got some track record here with the Iranians acting loco, using language that Miss Hinojosa might understand. I don't know. You can't reason with these people. And they all sound so silly making this argument. How many people did Obama bomb, unilaterally without running it by Congress? And of course, wide majority of Republicans were like, yeah, we support this. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Yes, I'm going to get to Alex Padilla, a.k.a. Jose. Stay tuned. Greetings, friends. Welcome back. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law. So, sure you've heard that Vice President J.D. Vance called Alex Padilla, who is a sitting senator, Jose Padilla. Now, what was this? Just a slip of the tongue. I mean, my gosh. The absurdity of this, of course, is that Mr. Padilla, as a senator and Democrat agitator, has no qualms about going on television and calling you and I Nazis. This guy is notorious for slamming Trump supporters as Nazis, white supremacists, etc. So anyway, everybody's having a conniption fit about this. LA Mayor Karen Bass is very, very upset. And Friday night at a City Hall press conference, she wanted everybody to know about it. This is what she said. Mind you, LA's still on edge and smoldering from disastrous riots. This is what the mayor is wasting her time on.
Mr. Vice President, how dare you disrespect our senator? You don't know his name, but yet you served with him before you were vice president, and you continue to serve with him today, because the last time I checked, the Vice President of the United States is the President of the U.S. Senate. You serve with him today, and how dare you disrespect him and call him Jose? But I guess he just looked like anybody to you. Well, he's not just anybody to us. He is our senator.
I can't. He's our senator. Well, by the way, Saturday morning, MSNBC The Weekend, hosted by Eugene Daniels. Alex Padilla himself responded to this slur by J.D. Vance, calling him Jose Padilla. Here's Alex Padilla basically in tears over this. Holy shnikes.
He's currently the president of the Senate where you serve. He also went to Yale. I assume that he knows your name is Alex Padilla. Your response to him calling you Jose?
Oh, he knows my name. He knows my name. Look, sadly, it's just an indicator of how petty and unserious this administration is. But he's the vice president of the United States. You think he'd take the situation in Los Angeles more seriously? You think maybe he'd take a moment to talk to some of the families who have been impacted, have been terrorized, to feel what's really going on the ground. You saw him shaking hands with Marines, but did he listen to the Marines? Because we have, the report after report of the Marines, so many of the Marines themselves that don't want to be there. That's not why they enlisted. Or if not the migrant families, how about the employers, right, who I know are speaking up because they're concerned about their workforce? We've got a lot of important work to do, but this is how the vice president chooses to act, and that says a lot.
He's getting choked up about this. Look, I know. Look, my last name is Mirejovsky, first name Sam. People have messed that up all sorts of unspeakable ways over the years. You know, I would be in a puddle if I cried every time someone effed up my name, Robbie. Just, saying. This guy's a senator. He's a man. Grow up. I'm going to start calling him Alexis Padilla. He keeps this up. You know what the real problem is? The real problem is that the Democratic Party has created an environment where they have spent so much taxpayer money funding militant, basically Antifa groups that go in and burn cities every time there is some form of, need to protest, from BLM to anti-ICE to Palestine, okay? And Padilla's part of the system. He created this mess in Los Angeles. He's a senator from California. Padilla is a longtime Democrat operative in the state. He was in state government. Padilla was Attorney General, the chief law enforcement officer of the state. He's sitting here butthurt about
Mr. Vice President,
being called Jose.
How dare you?
When
disrespect
every failure you see on display in California,
you don't know his
he bears
name,
some
but yet
personal
you served
direct
with him
responsibility
before you were vice president, and you continue
really
to serve with him
to
today.
me.
Because the last time I checked, the
All
vice
of these
president of the
Democrats
United
are
States
such
is the president
losers.
of the U.S.
Look
Senate.
at AOC,
You
for
serve with
example.
him today,
this was a
and how
great
dare
interview,
you
too.
disrespect him and call him Jose?
I have
but
to-
I guess
I
he
have to
just
share it
looked
with
like
you.
anybody
This
to
was
you.
with Margaret
Well, he's
Hoover,
not just anybody to us. He is
on
our
the
senator.
firing line. This interview happened some time ago, but it was all about Palestine. Now that it matters, of course, because Hamas is here. This clip now has been dusted off and is making the rounds again. Hoover asked AOC, you use the term the occupation of Palestine. Okay? What do you mean? What did you mean by that? And listen to the response.
I think what I meant is like the settlements that are increasing in some of these areas and places where Palestinians are experiencing difficulty in access to their housing and homes.
Do you think you can expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd also just, I am not the expert on geopolitics on this issue.
I'm not the expert. None of these people are experts. The only thing they're experts are is agitation and revolution. Because they're all basically, amateur revolutionaries, neo-Marxists. It's gross. And at least, not always, I agree with him, but at least there's one sound person when it comes to Iran and terror in the Democratic Party, and that is John Fetterman, who today on Fox News defended the president, but admitted that there were a lot in his party, many in his party, who did not see eye to eye with him on this.
There's going to be a lot of people in my party that are going to disagree with the strike in Iran, and I actually support that. I've been always calling for that thing. I think it was entirely appropriate. And again, there might be votes on that. So for me, that's not a war. That was a very limited military exercise, and it struck that, and then that's where we're at. So really, it really wasn't about unconstitutional or it's anything like that.
Precisely right. You can certainly go through history, and you have on the Iranian threat, people like Hillary Clinton and Obama agreeing. However, and this is really critical, if you look at the through line from the Obama era nuclear policy vis-a-vis Iran, there is a straight connection between the events of this weekend back to Obama and his team of negotiators led by none other than a horseface, John Kerry. And the entire objective, if you look at what the Obama administration did, they publicly sounded very much like Trump. They publicly said all the same things that Trump is saying. Iran can't have a nuclear bomb. Iran must not have a nuclear bomb. In fact, I think I played a clip last week where Obama said something along the lines of, as I have said before, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. But privately, I can tell you that the objective of Team Obama was to make Iran, to give Iran enough money, enough leeway, enough time through negotiations to build a nuclear weapon. Hell, if Obama could have sent him the nuclear technology, he would have. And the reason for it is that the Democrats, unbeknownst, by the way, to a lot of Jews that support the Democratic Party and have certainly over the years, the Democratic Party under Obama had a singular mission to screw over Israel as much as possible. They believed that a nuclear Israel was dangerous, believe it or not, to the U.S. And I'm shocked right now, by the way, I see conservatives echoing this ridiculous thinking. It blows my mind. Okay, we have a, Judeo-Christian government that is, that is a true democracy where you have true Western values, where you have, that has proven that it can look out for itself, that has never attacked us. And then you've got all these countries out there who are state sponsors of terrorism. At the top of the pile, historically speaking, for the past almost 50 years is Iran. And, Democrats, Obama people, the Valerie Jarretts of the world, they want to give nukes to Iran to keep, quote unquote, Israel in check. If you're aligned with that thinking, I'm worried for you. You got to crack open the history books, my friends. I'm sorry. That's not a good position to have. So, this is the absolute state of things. And right. And I'll tell you, maybe none of this would have been necessary if Obama had actually followed through on his threats. I am convinced that John Kerry just went over there to help the Iranians buy time. Every negotiation that Kerry led was by design meant to be fruitless, was meant to just prolong things. And then the pallet of cash, the billions that were sent to the Iranians as a little thank you for talking to us. We love you. Pikachu. Yeah, that really helped. Fabulous. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Right back after this, folks. Don't go anywhere. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. Oh, here's another guy over the weekend complaining about the unauthorized strikes on Iran. None other than Senator Bernie Sanders. Sam Mirejovsky here, News Talk 840 KXNT. Welcome back to the What's Right show. Here is Bernie Sanders at a rally. He'd just been told that our B-2 bombers had flown over Iran and attacked 3 sites.
This is a statement from Donald Trump, quote, "We have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran," etc. I agree. And I want to tell you something. Not only is this news that I've just heard, the second alarming that all of you have just heard, but it is so grossly unconstitutional. All of you know that the only entity that can take this country to war is the U.S. Congress. The president does not have the right.
Well, here are some strikes done by presidents of the United States without prior congressional approval. Ronald Reagan, for example, the Libya airstrikes in 86, Persian Gulf operations in 87 and 88. Bill Clinton, 1993, Iraq intelligence headquarters bombing. It's a retaliation for an assassination plot. The Bosnia air campaign, 95. Afghanistan, 1998. Sudan in the same year. Remember the pharmaceutical plant taken out by Bill Clinton. The Kosovo air campaign in 1999. Some of these attacks actually taking place allegedly while getting serviced by a young Monica Lewinsky in the Oval Office. I don't know, but maybe that was what required congressional approval, Robbie. Not certain. George W. Bush, Somalia signature strikes in 2007. Barack Obama in 2009, Yemen. 2011, Libya. Remember that? And in 2014, the ISIS campaign in Syria and Iraq. In 2016 alone, Obama dropped over 12,000 bombs on Syria. What did we drop? 8 bombs this weekend? And the Democrats are losing their minds. Even Joe Biden did strikes in Syria in 21, 23, and in last year in 2024, Yemen, Red Sea, striking the Houthis, protecting valuable shipping lanes. And I think the only thing you heard from Republicans on that is too little, too late. So, again, why this matters is the Democratic Party is slowly being reduced to a sideshow. Trump is out there. If he pulls this off, and I think he can, literally end the Iranian regime by dropping a handful of bombs and going on Twitter. All right? And all previous presidents combined, literally sending boots on the ground, it made a complete mess of the Middle East. Trump is actually going to be the one who shows the restraint, who gets peace done. It happens. He'll shut down not only his own critics, people on our side of the aisle, but obviously the left. The left, comprised of what? Basically militant, terrorist-loving, commie pinko, dorks, are just reduced to a sideshow. They're just here for entertainment. And because they're not intellectually consistent about anything, regardless whether it's foreign policy, the Constitution, even immigration, Democrats now being forced into the extreme of protecting illegal immigrant rapists and child traffickers. Human trafficking, one of the allegations, the charges facing Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Right? He was a big-time liberal darling. This is what the Democratic Party is. So I think, stepping back from it, Trump's conducting himself so far with a fair amount of success, and the Republicans that are loudest in opposing him really are the clowns. Look at MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's nuts. She's always been nuts. Massey, Rand Paul. One thing, and I disagree, there's a online philosopher of sorts, Mike Cernovich, who got a big following on X. Really smart guy, super, super smart guy. And I find myself agreeing with him on a lot. Not quite so much on the same page with him vis-a-vis Iran. That's okay. But one thing that Cernovich does say consistently, and he's right about this with Massey and with Rand Paul, is that they sit here and lecture us on the budget. But what did they do to end USAID? What did they do to blow the whistle on the scam in Washington? Surely they knew. Rand Paul's been a senator for over a decade. This guy knows. I don't think Senator Paul is in on the scam, but he certainly is aware of his colleagues that are. What did he do about it? And that's a valid criticism, right? So you got these Republicans that aren't contributing to the solution. And here we're getting to the solutions of things. And that's my point. If I have to, 2 days following this Iranian attack, where are we at? Where are we headed? Well, we're headed toward a solution. And slowly, again, I think things can always turn out differently. I'm not promising a certain outcome, and anybody that does is a fool. But, I see this situation developing very positively in Iran. I think the regime is in death throes. I think the regime has been actually in a very tough spot for a number of years. And this is sort of this event now, this trigger. And it all started with October 7th, which may go down in history as one of the greatest military miscalculations in the world. In the world. Hamas, supported by Iran and Hezbollah, attacking Israel, getting decimated, then Hezbollah getting decimated, then Syria falls, and now what's left? Iran, the Houthis, and Burkina Faso? Please. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Be back tomorrow with updates on all of this at your service. Sam at whatsrightshow.com. Email me with any comments, questions, concerns. See you later.